In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful.
Imagine a world, a community, where the greatest man to ever walk the earth, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was known for his beautiful smile, his gentle laughter, a man whose very presence brought joy and tranquility. Yet, in that same blessed community, walked a man, a companion, whose face was rarely touched by a smile, whose eyes held a deep, chilling seriousness, a man whose heart was so consumed by the reality of the hereafter that the fleeting joys of this world could not move him to laughter. This is the story of Abu Darda, Uwaymir ibn Malik al-Khazraji, a man whose life is a profound and at times terrifying reminder of the true meaning of existence and the certainty of the grave. The title itself is a hook, a mystery, the companion who never laughed. But the truth, as always, is far more complex and far more powerful. It is not that he was incapable of joy, or that he was a man of perpetual gloom. Rather, his laughter, his delight, was reserved for the eternal, and his seriousness was a shield against the deception of the temporary. He once said, and this quote is the key to understanding his soul. He said, "3 things make me laugh, and 3 things make me cry." Think about that for a moment. A companion of the Prophet, a man of immense wisdom, finds only 6 things in the vastness of creation worthy of such a profound emotional response. What were the 3 things that moved him to a rare, perhaps even sorrowful, laughter? He said, "The one who has hope in this world, while death is seeking him." He laughed at the sheer, heart-breaking irony of a soul chasing a shadow, while the ultimate reality, the angel of death, is already standing at the door. He laughed at the delusion, the self-deception of a man building a mansion, when his true home, the grave, is already dug. He laughed at the one who is heedless while he is not being neglected. He laughed at the man who believes he is free, unobserved, unrecorded, while every breath, every thought, every whisper is being meticulously documented by the angels and will be presented on a day where there is no escape. And finally, he laughed at the one who laughs with his mouth full while he does not know whether he has pleased the Lord or angered him. He laughed at the audacity, the spiritual recklessness of a soul indulging in pleasure without a moment's pause to consider its ultimate destination. This was the nature of Abu Darda's seriousness. It was not a personal affliction. It was a profound, spiritual clarity, a vision so sharp that it cut through the illusions of this world and saw only the stark reality of the hereafter. But how did this man, this scholar, this judge, arrive at such a terrifying level of certainty? His journey began not in piety, but in the heart of pre-Islamic ignorance, the Jahiliyyah. Abu Darda was a wealthy merchant in Medina, a man of status, a man who loved his life, and a man who was deeply devoted to his idol. His idol, a beautiful wooden statue, was the center of his spiritual life, a source of comfort, and a symbol of his identity. He would perfume it, adorn it, and offer it his devotion. He was content in his delusion. But Allah, in his infinite mercy, had a different plan for Abu Darda. He had a friend, a man named Abdullah ibn Rawaha, a man who had already embraced the light of Islam, a man whose heart ached for his friend's salvation. One day, while Abu Darda was away, busy with his trade, Abdullah ibn Rawaha approached his house. He found the door open, and the idol standing proudly in its place. Imagine the scene, the tension, the spiritual warfare in that moment. Abdullah ibn Rawaha, a man of courage, a man of conviction, entered the house, and with a swift, decisive action, he took an axe and began to shatter the idol. When Abu Darda returned, he saw the fragments of his beloved god scattered across the floor. His heart was seized by a mixture of rage and confusion. He cried out, "May Allah curse the one who did this." He looked at the pieces, and then a moment of profound, terrifying clarity struck him. He began to speak to the fragments, to the shattered wood. If you were truly a god, you would have defended yourself. You would have prevented this destruction. In that single moment, the entire foundation of his belief system crumbled. The logic was undeniable. A god that cannot defend itself is no god at all. He rushed to find his friend, Abdullah ibn Rawaha, and together they went to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Abu Darda took the Shahada, the declaration of faith, and entered the fold of Islam. But his conversion was not a gentle transition. It was a spiritual explosion. He did not simply become a Muslim, he became a man consumed by regret. He looked back at the years he had spent in ignorance, the time wasted in devotion to a false god, and a profound sense of urgency took hold of his soul. This regret, this fear of having lost time, was the fire that forged his seriousness. He realized that every moment spent in heedlessness was a moment stolen from his preparation for the grave. And from that day forward, Abu Darda became a man obsessed with knowledge, obsessed with action, and most of all, obsessed with the remembrance of death. He was a man who understood, with chilling certainty, that the grave is not a distant destination, but a constant companion. He knew that the moment of death, the moment the soul is pulled from the body, is the moment of truth, the moment the laughter of this world dies, and the eternal reality begins. He would often say, "And let these words echo in your heart. He who remembers death often, then his delight becomes less, and his enviousness of others diminishes." This was his prescription for a life of peace, a life free from the spiritual diseases of envy and greed. Why be envious of a man's wealth, when you know that wealth will be left behind, and the man will enter his grave with nothing but his deeds? Why delight in a temporary pleasure, when you know that pleasure will be cut short, and the true, eternal delight is yet to come? Abu Darda's life became a race against time, a desperate effort to fill the scales of his deeds, before the angel of death called his name. He became known as the scholar of the Ummah, a man who combined knowledge with action, a man who would spend his nights in prayer, and his days in teaching, and his every waking moment in the remembrance of the grave. He was a man who had seen the illusion, and could no longer be fooled by it. He saw the world for what it truly was, a bridge, a temporary crossing, and not a home. And this is where we pause, at the height of his spiritual transformation, a man whose every action was a preparation for the first night in the grave. In the next part of this profound story, we will delve deeper into the wisdom of Abu Darda, his chilling advice to his wife, his final moments, and the lessons his life holds for us, as we too walk this earth with the certainty of death hanging over us. Stay with us as we continue to explore the life of the companion